Standing right in front of you was a guy who looked a bit like a teacher, and he's actually a psychologist. But, get this, his own wife is dealing with depression. This guy, who has a beautiful coworker who's got a crush on him, spends a lot of time up close with patients. His name is Juan, and he's a pretty well-known psychologist. Thing is, his wife has been battling depression for years. One minute she's suddenly cranky, the next she's sleeping like a log, and you can't wake her up. If the housekeeper didn't remind her, she'd even forget her husband's birthday. At first, Aja planned to bake a cake for her husband herself, but wouldn't you know it, this time the depression hit again, and she practically slept through the whole day until evening. With no other choice, she had to call her secretary, Saji, and ask for help to buy her an extra hour before Juan got home. Turns out, Saji is super on the ball. She even brought a cake, a gift, and got all dressed up. She went to Juan's office, wished him a happy birthday, and pulled out this little present she'd had ready. When Juan thanked her and was about to leave, she grabbed his hand and said, "Your wife let me keep you a bit longer. 1 hour is all I need." After that, she pulled his hand toward her curvy backside on her own. Juan played along perfectly, giving her a knowing smile. Meanwhile, back at home, Aja was busy baking, but her efforts got messed up by her daughter by accident. Upset, she had to call her younger sister for help, but her sister, who knows Aja's personality well, had been waiting at the bakery beforehand, because ever since Aja got sick, it's been the same thing every year. After Juan and Saji finished their mission, they realized they were way over time and rushed home. When they got to the door, they unexpectedly bumped into Aja's younger sister, Imjit, who was on her way back after delivering the cake. Seeing Imjit about to fall, Juan immediately grabbed her by her small waist. They looked at each other affectionately for a few seconds, making onlookers think they were a couple. Imjit, a little embarrassed, pushed Juan away and scolded him for being late and making her sister wait. After saying that, she left awkwardly. When Juan got inside, he put on a happy face and started celebrating his birthday with his wife and kids. Aja, next to him, was smiling warmly. Ever since she got sick, maybe every day like this is a special happy one for her. Before bed, after giving her husband his birthday present, the couple planned to have a tender moment. Maybe because he'd just had some intense action with his secretary. After Juan got through the foreplay, he suddenly lost interest. He told his wife he was tired, and even though she didn't want to, she had to accept her husband's coldness. Finally, in the middle of the night, Juan secretly went to the fridge for a drink, reminiscing about the passionate encounter with his secretary that afternoon, and the meeting with his wife's younger sister. The next day, Aja saw Juan off, and she happened to spot a small fancy gift in his car. Juan, acting all casual, said, "Oh, that's from Saji. She brought it with the cake." After saying goodbye to his wife, the guy took off. Aja remembered the call with the secretary, when she'd said she'd forgotten it was her husband's birthday. Saji had even said she didn't know when her husband's birthday was, yet she had a cake and gift ready. This made Aja suspect that her husband and Saji were having an affair. Maybe it was a secret she wasn't supposed to know. The woman wore a black nightgown with a petite willow-like figure, plus her thick hair that seemed to be everywhere. It was a captivating picture. It made the homeowner, who had just returned from the office, unable to take his eyes off her. Just then, the woman seemed to realize someone was nearby. She picked up a bunch of grapes and held them at her smooth porcelain-like neck, playfully teasing with them. Looking closer, the man realized he seemed to have met this woman before. Turns out, a few days earlier, this woman had come to their house to interview for the nanny position. When she left the house, she passed by Juan, who was just getting back home. At that time, Juan had taken the opportunity to lightly brush her hand. And why was there a nanny in the house all of a sudden, without any reason? It was because Aja had taken her daughter swimming alone. But while her daughter was practicing, she had a relapse and drifted off, barely able to wake up. By chance, her daughter got a cramp and sank to the bottom of the pool. Her daughter had an accident that Aja was completely unaware of. Luckily, someone noticed in time and saved her daughter's life. When Juan and everyone else arrived at the scene, after hearing about his daughter's accident, Aja saw her husband and immediately hugged him, apologizing to him. The serious-faced housekeeper pulled her husband aside to talk. When Saji arrived to comfort Juan, Aja's younger sister, Imjit, spoke up and questioned why Saji was there. Knowing Saji arrived in Juan's car, Imjit scolded her for meddling in other people's families. Saji, seeing Imjit's unfriendly attitude, ignored her and turned away, leaving. The housekeeper and Juan discussed hiring another nanny to take care of both his daughter and Juan. Since Aja's health was getting worse, Juan agreed with the housekeeper's suggestion, and during his live stream that evening, he announced that they were looking for a new nanny. Even though many applicants came to the house for interviews over the next few days, everyone was demanding high pay and wanted weekends off, making it really hard to find the right person. Just as Aja was feeling ready to end the interviews for the day, a woman appeared, playing outside with her daughter, catching Aja's attention. After a short chat, she found out that the woman was also there to apply for the nanny position. Turns out, this woman, named Fa, was not only beautiful, highly educated and experienced, but she also didn't need weekends off, could stay at the house, and her salary was reasonable. On top of that, her daughter seemed to like Fa as well. Without a doubt, Aja decided to hire Fa as the nanny. But as she was about to finalize the decision, the housekeeper stopped her, saying that she had found the right person for Aja. Clearly, the housekeeper didn't like the woman in front of them. After Fa left, Aja scolded the housekeeper for not telling her beforehand and embarrassing her in front of someone else. However, the housekeeper revealed her concerns. She said that a young, beautiful girl like that wasn't suitable to be a nanny, especially one who would be staying in the house. It was like inviting a wolf into their home. After the housekeeper's explanation, Aja understood her good intentions. Meanwhile, Fa called the service center to ask about the other people who had interviewed at Aja's house. This phone call then led to the nanny, who was supposed to start working at Aja's house, the next day getting into an accident on the way to Aja's. Worried, Aja contacted the childcare center, but no one suitable was available to start immediately. In this emergency situation, Aja suddenly thought back to the day Fa had come to their house. When Fa arrived at Aja's house, she didn't miss a chance to give the housekeeper a hard time by asking her to carry her bags. It seemed like she was getting back at her for not being hired the last time. After introducing her to the house, Aja couldn't help but notice the nanny's hot body. Comparing their outfits, she felt like she was the nanny instead. Just then, Fa stood in front of the mirror, seemingly blocking Aja's way on purpose, creating a feeling like she was declaring war. Late that night, the lucky homeowner and his family's nanny ran into each other in the kitchen while preparing a late-night snack. Although it seemed like a chance encounter, it was also like a perfect match. The nanny grabbed an apple, and the guy's hands started to get restless on their own. But the nanny just focused on eating the apple, as if she knew everything beforehand. When the apple fell to the ground, an amazing performance was about to take place. The next part of the scene isn't suitable to be aired, so we'll skip it. But this new nanny wasn't someone to be messed with. As soon as she arrived, she undermined the housekeeper and acted arrogantly towards Aja. Moreover, the outfits she brought were all black, lacy negligees that many guys dream of. Her intentions were obvious. That evening, she chose to wear a sexy nightgown, intentionally flaunting it in front of her boss. This made the guy, who was already tired from a stressful day at work, instantly aroused. If she hadn't just arrived, he might have already pounced. Back in his room, the guy could only cool himself down by taking a cold shower. The next morning, seeing her daughter and Fa getting along so well, Aja felt reassured, believing her decision was right. When the guy came down for breakfast, Aja didn't know that the two had already heated things up. The night before, when the guy asked Aja to come to his clinic for treatment, Aja suggested that Fa come along too. The guy agreed, but the housekeeper didn't trust this new face one bit. While the two were doing housework, Fa tried to butter up the housekeeper to learn about Aja's health condition. However, the housekeeper was tight-lipped, only telling her to just take good care of the little mistress. That afternoon, when Aja and she arrived at the guy's clinic, through Aja's introduction, Seiji, the secretary, learned that this pretty young woman was the newly hired nanny. She looked at Fa with hostility, while Fa also realized that this secretary wasn't simple. Fa stepped forward to test the waters, and the two quickly got into a jealous argument. But because Fa was clever, Seiji was left at a disadvantage. To make Fa remember this humiliation, she intentionally tripped Fa while she was pouring water, making her soaking wet. Since the little mistress was there, Fa couldn't react immediately. As she was about to go change with a sour mood, she happened to see Aja undergoing treatment through the crack of the door. She secretly observed to understand the situation, but was spotted by the guy. Luckily, she retreated in time and hid in the bathroom without being discovered. After the treatment, Aja was exhausted and couldn't drive. Saji volunteered to drive them home. Juan ignored Saji and asked Fa to drive. Before leaving, Fa didn't forget to get back at Saji by asking her to serve her. This nanny was certainly full of tricks. Saji was so angry that she stomped her foot. Back at home, Juan hinted to Aja that after taking her medicine tonight, she would sleep soundly. And then he said he wouldn't have dinner and would come to the kitchen for a late-night snack at 11 p.m. Fa, understanding Juan's meaning, that evening, she wore a new nightgown she had just bought and appeared in the kitchen on time. as usual. Just as they were about to get down to business, suddenly a bright car headlight interrupted their fun. Juan checked, and it seemed like someone had come to visit. He asked Fa to go back for now. With no other choice, Fa reluctantly went back, but she didn't go to her own room. Instead, she snuck into the stairwell. Expressing her frustration, she stood on the stairs, glaring at the uninvited guest with hatred. "What are you doing here at this hour?" The drunk sister-in-law had come to visit. While her brother-in-law was taking care of her, she grabbed his hand and touched herself, constantly observing his reactions. Just when she thought her plan was about to succeed, her husband, Tam, arrived to pick her up. Juan, through his conversation with Tam, learned that they had just had a fight. Imjit got angry and left the house to go drinking, and the cause of the fight was an old issue. Before getting married, Imjit liked to party, and she was photographed lying with an unknown man. When Tam, her then-boyfriend, asked Imjit about the incident, she said nothing. If it weren't for his sincere love for her, she wouldn't have been able to avoid being exposed for the secret that had once broken his heart. The two had broken up long ago, and this was also Tam's pain. He had always been looking for information about this unidentified man. When Tam finished, he took Imjit away. At this moment, Imjit stared at Juan with a look of disappointment. After Juan saw the two off, he fell asleep on the sofa while watching TV without realizing it. In the morning, when the housekeeper found him and worried he might catch a cold, she woke him up. When Juan got off the sofa, the housekeeper noticed a girl's hairpin on it, which made her even more worried. Originally, Juan had some hardships in his childhood when he was abandoned by his parents. The current housekeeper was actually a nun who adopted him when he was young. Due to the lack of family love in his childhood, Juan's personality became distorted as he grew up. When he was older, Juan brought a girl back to the church to stay overnight and was discovered by the housekeeper, who was still a nun at the time. She also kept the girl's hairpin and criticized Juan for being promiscuous. But Juan, who had become an adult, felt it wasn't a big deal and told the housekeeper not to worry too much. After saying that, he left, leaving the housekeeper worried. The housekeeper, who had watched Juan grow up since he was a child, considered him her own son. She worried that Juan would return to his promiscuous ways, and she didn't want any woman to break up the family's happiness. This was also why the housekeeper had a hard time accepting Fa. At this moment, she looked at the unknown hairpin, then looked at Fa in the distance. Just as she was about to approach to ask, suddenly there were guests at the door. It turned out to be Aja's stepmother and younger sister Imjit, coming to get the car left behind the night before. When the housekeeper brought them water, she overheard Imjit talking about the events of the previous night. The housekeeper looked at the hairpin on Imjit's head. Seemingly understanding something, the stepmother learned about the family having a new nanny from Aja. When she approached and greeted Fa, her makeup and dress made her displeased. When they pulled the nanny, Fa, aside, the stepmother warned Aja that this person wasn't simple. But Aja brushed it off, believing that Fa and her daughter were meant to be, that she could babysit and take good care of her daughter. Her younger sister, Imjit, standing nearby, couldn't help but chime in, also warning her to be careful with this nanny, that she might be taking care of her husband too. Aja told her sister not to talk nonsense. The stepmother continued to remind Aja not to be so headstrong. She needed to learn to take precautions gradually. She suggested that Aja should change the nanny, but Aja still refused to change her mind, saying they were meddling and managing her affairs too much. During the argument, Aja exposed her stepmother's shortcomings, blaming her father for remarrying so soon after her mother passed away. Hearing these words, the stepmother was furious and felt wronged for intentionally reminding her, only to be scolded by Aja. The argument did not alleviate their disagreement. That afternoon, when Aja was preparing to go to Juan's clinic for treatment, the housekeeper reminded her that she should also nurture her relationship with Juan. Having a meal together from time to time wouldn't hurt. And as she was about to leave, Fa volunteered to go with Aja to Juan's clinic. Perhaps it was because of the reminders from her stepmother and sister this morning, which made her unable to control her guard against this nanny. Aja declined her offer to go along and said that she would have dinner with Juan. After Aja left, the nanny went back to her own room, and her expression became strange. She seemed to be hiding an unspeakable secret. In the middle of the night, when the wife woke up, she discovered her husband doing unspeakable things with the nanny in the kitchen. That evening, while enjoying a candlelit dinner together after many years without private time, the husband deceitfully spoke sweet words, but inside, he wanted to quickly finish dinner and go home. Because at home, there was a beautiful nanny waiting for him to enjoy a late-night snack together. Therefore, the husband, a psychologist, held Aja's hand tightly, using the opportunity to comfort her. At the same time, He also used subtle hypnotic techniques to trigger Aja's illness again. When he was about to intensify it to make Aja sleep, she suddenly pulled her hand away and used the excuse of going to the bathroom. At this moment, when Juan thought everything had failed unexpectedly, the unforeseen happened. Aja still had a relapse and collapsed in the bathroom. When Juan brought Aja back home, the nanny, Fa, quickly came to help, but it was actually to send a message to Juan. After settling Aja down, the nanny hinted to Juan whether he should come down for a late-night snack. Juan responded with a wicked smile, saying that the reason he didn't eat dinner at home was because he was waiting for this. Then their hot scene happened as mentioned at the beginning. However, this face-to-face encounter at home didn't uncover the illicit acts between Juan and Fa. What Aja saw was only in her dream. Early in the morning when Aja woke up, she immediately rushed to the kitchen. Along the way, she heard the laughter of Juan and the nanny, Fa. She quickly sped up to get to the kitchen and saw the two playing with her daughter. Although nothing happened, Aja felt like she was the odd one out. Juan, Fa, and her daughter looked like a family of three. When they met her mother, when her daughter wanted to invite Aja to go swimming, she hesitated. Because the last time she had a relapse, it caused her daughter to nearly drown. Just as Aja was about to refuse, Juan said he would go along too. Only then did Aja feel reassured and agree. At this time, Juan informed his secretary that he wouldn't be going to work today. When Saji, the secretary, heard that Juan wanted to go swimming, she had an evil grin. At the gate, Aja watched her daughter, Juan, and Fa walk hand in hand to go swimming. She couldn't help but admire them. Finally, after Fa passionately mixed red coloring into the water in the sink, causing Aja to see in panic, leading to her fainting in the bathroom. At the pool, after Fa had carefully prepared, she took off her robe, revealing her hot body, making Juan think that he could relax and release with Fa. But at this moment, the sudden appearance of Saji, the secretary, made Fa feel annoyed. During the break, Saji approached Fa and said that she had seen the intimate acts between Juan and her, and she had taken pictures as proof. She demanded that Fa stay away from Juan, otherwise, she would send the pictures to Aja. However, Fa, who was sharp-witted, wasn't scared. She retorted by asking Saji if she told Aja, neither of them would escape responsibility. And since Saji, a secretary, suddenly appeared at the pool, clearly to seduce Juan, she would be the first one in trouble. Saji was defeated again. She angrily swung her hand and slapped Fa. Fa didn't back down and immediately retaliated. So the two women, competing in broad daylight, started fighting. On the other side, her younger sister, Imjit, because she couldn't reach Aja or the housekeeper and worried about Aja's safety, came to her sister's house, only to discover that Aja had had an accident, fainting in the bathroom. She took Aja to the clinic, and when Juan arrived at the clinic later, during their conversation, Imjit learned that it was Fa's carelessness that led to her sister's relapse and fall there. Immediately, she got furious and decided to find Fa to settle the score. When Imjit brought her niece home, she went straight to the bathroom where Aja fell and found everything had been cleaned up by Fa. Imjit, angry and dissatisfied, confronted Fa, accusing her of doing this intentionally. However, Fa was confident and completely unafraid, as she seemed to hold a secret of Imjit's. Imjit was furious. She glared at her with hatred and lifted her skirt. She couldn't accept that the man she had been infatuated with was about to belong to someone else. However, this woman was just a lowly nanny, and the man she was talking about was the owner of this house, Juan. What was even more infuriating was that she didn't expect that the appearance of Juan's sister-in-law, Imjit, had ruined her and Juan's plan. It wasn't the story that made her angry, but the discovery in this house. But she thought about how this discovery could become a weapon to control Imjit later. Tonight, when Imjit discovered the scheming of the nanny, Fa, she confronted her and accused her of doing this on purpose. Fa quickly defended herself, saying it was just an accident, but Imjit saw through her poor act. She rebuked Fa, asking how a nanny could harm her employer like that, and threatened to fire her. However, Fa, with her cunning tongue, said Imjit had no right to do this unless she wanted to replace the lady of the house and fire her. Imjit, worried, suggested she shouldn't talk nonsense. Seeing Imjit's panic, Fa quickly took the opportunity to recount the events she had witnessed that one night. She saw Imjit doing unspeakable things with her sister's husband. Having her shameful secret exposed made Imjit furious, and she retaliated with a slap across Fa's face. However, instead of getting angry, Fa mocked Imjit. "The way you're acting just proves what I said is true," she laughed loudly and continued. "Aja is really more pitiful than I thought. To be betrayed by her own sister like this. Aren't we on the same level?" Imjit didn't expect that this lowly nanny would dare to expose her secret. She was furious and prepared to strike again, but unexpectedly, Fa, bold and unafraid, quickly fought back. The confrontation between the two became fierce and evenly matched. Hearing the commotion, Juan called out for them to stop. "Don't fight, stop it." When Fa saw Juan arrive, she pretended to be weak, making herself appear even more vulnerable. Juan stepped forward, stopped both of them, and criticized Imjit for hitting so hard. Fa, feigning pain, lay on the ground crying. Imjit angrily left the scene. She didn't expect to be taken advantage of by this cunning nanny. On the way home, Imjit lay across the steering wheel, tears falling uncontrollably, unable to suppress the memories of a year ago. At that time, Juan, with sweet words, lured her into bed. Back then, Imjit, worried that Juan hadn't divorced her sister, couldn't do anything to wrong her sister. But Juan, a deceitful and hypocritical man, reassured her and deceived her sister, saying they could live in their own family bliss. As long as no one found out, there would be no worries later. At that time, Imjit, blinded by love, believed Juan's sweet talk. Now she regretted it endlessly. But this was a situation with no solution. Meanwhile, the nanny at home pretended to cry in front of Juan and declared that she truly loved him. For her happiness, she could be patient, promising that she wouldn't cause trouble and only needed Juan to ensure no other women came looking for him. Otherwise, they didn't need to be together. Meanwhile, Aja, at the hospital, randomly flipped through photos from when she worked there previously. When she zoomed in on a photo, she noticed a strange woman following her from behind. It turned out that before she married Juan, she had worked at the hospital as an obstetrician. She met this strange woman when she came for a pregnancy checkup. However, that woman kept complaining about the man who got her pregnant and how awful he was. At first, Fa thought it was just a typical marital conflict, but then she found out that the strange woman was frequently following her. Now, seeing this person again in the photo, she began to think about the similarities between the strange woman and the nanny. Fa, at home. Could there be a connection between them? Thinking about this, she started to feel scared. Her husband was secretly having an affair with the nanny, leaving her, the weak and injured wife, alone in the hospital room, not paying attention to her. Meanwhile, the wife in the hospital room felt that something was wrong, and she had an extremely uneasy feeling. She called her husband, but no one answered. Little did she know that at this moment, her husband, Juan, was immersed in gentle pleasure and couldn't control himself anymore. Not being able to reach him made Aja inevitably overthink. She tried to convince herself not to think too much, but she couldn't suppress her doubts about the nanny at home. Meanwhile, after everything was done, the two satisfied each other. Fa, the cunning nanny, asked Juan about the remaining time until Aja was discharged. Juan felt a bit regretful, telling Fa that she would be discharged tomorrow. Fa, with a seductive look, hinted that now the housekeeper had taken a leave of absence and Aja was in the hospital. If they could have a few more days together, how wonderful it would be. After some encouragement, Juan seemed to have finalized his plan. The next day, Aja felt that her body was no longer a big problem, and asked the doctor if she could go home. However, the doctor informed her that she actually could have gone home earlier, but Juan had called and requested that she rest more, asking for her to be discharged in a few more days. It seemed like Juan was following Fa's advice and indulging in gentle pleasure, not wanting his wife to disturb them. However, Juan didn't know that this decision was gradually ruining the plan he had been preparing for many years. Since the doctor asked Aja to temporarily stop using the medication at home, she stayed at the hospital for a few more days. During the medication break, Aja was curious why her health improved significantly without taking the medicine. This made her start to doubt the unlabeled medication. Therefore, she contacted a friend who worked at a pharmacy and asked her to help check the ingredients of the medicine she was taking. Soon after asking her colleague for help, Juan pretended to visit Aja insincerely, along with her sister and daughter. Her daughter said she missed her mom very much, and Juan, feigning sincerity, told her daughter to take care of her mom more. At that moment, Aja inexplicably felt disgusted by Juan. Gazing at the beautiful nanny comforting her daughter, she felt like this nanny was more like her daughter's mother. Suddenly, Aja noticed a red mark on Juan's neck, and she wondered how it got there. She thought that anyone would know what it was if they weren't single. Juan, noticing Aja's suspicious look, pretended to be itchy, explaining that it was a mosquito bite. When Aja was about to ask further, Juan quickly cut her off, saying that she should just rest. When she got home, she could apply some ointment, and it would be fine. After saying that, he quickly ended his visit with the excuse that he didn't want to disturb his wife's rest. When her daughter and Aja said goodbye, Aja suddenly felt a strong dislike for Juan. On one side, in the supermarket, Juan and Fa were ostensibly choosing food for his daughter, but in reality, they were flirting with each other. But unfortunately, they were caught by Seiji, who had been pursuing Juan. Seiji quickly took out her phone and captured a picture of their intimate moment, then called Aja to report them. However, Aja calmly said it was nothing. But when Saji sent the photo to Aja, she was shocked by what she saw. She didn't expect them to be so brazen in public. Immediately, she discharged herself from the hospital without anyone knowing. She secretly asked her sister Imjit to pick her up, and specifically waited until evening to be brought home. Aja's actions were intended to take advantage of the situation at home and gather evidence. Her husband and the nanny were taking advantage of the time when his wife was sick in the hospital to carry on a dirty affair. But they didn't expect his wife to be discharged early and to be hiding to observe them. On the other side, Juan and the nanny, Fa, were on their way home. They were excited to see her daughter sleeping in the car, as this meant they would have more private time. After settling his daughter down, Juan couldn't contain his excitement any longer and started a quick makeout session on the stairs with Fa. In the darkness, Aja witnessed this scene and couldn't believe her eyes. Not long after, in the kitchen, they began to enjoy each other in a drunken state. Both of them couldn't control their interactions, their hands devotedly touching each other. Aja, hiding in the darkness, couldn't take it anymore. She didn't dare imagine what she would see if this continued. She immediately called Juan, wanting to stop them. But unexpectedly, Juan's reaction shocked Aja. Faced with her husband's reaction, Aja was disappointed and gave up on calling. She turned to call the nanny. As expected, both of them were busy with something important, not stopping for a moment. As soon as Fa picked up the phone, Aja stepped out of the darkness. Juan, upon realizing Aja was there, was startled, and Imjit, who was also there, was even more surprised. Juan awkwardly asked why Aja had come home early without letting him know. Aja coldly smiled, noticing that Juan was assessing the situation. Juan cleverly turned the question around, saying that Aja had intended to catch him making a mistake all along, hadn't she? Aja, full of hatred, was about to scold him, but Fa, unable to bear it, voluntarily apologized for drinking in the kitchen. Aja didn't expect that she had underestimated the nanny so much. Now being caught in the act, Fa put down her glass and wore a look of self-reproach on her face. Meanwhile, Imjit, as the younger sister, couldn't take it anymore and decided to step up to protect her sister. But Fa, confident and unafraid, threatened Imjit to keep her mouth shut. So why was Imjit afraid of Fa? It turned out that Imjit and Juan also had a relationship, which had become Fa's weapon to control her, making her angry but unable to speak up. This was also why Juan was surprised when he saw Imjit. When the situation became increasingly chaotic and difficult to control, the appearance of Imjit's husband ended this mess. When Imjit and Fa left, only Juan and Aja remained in the kitchen. Juan didn't admit his mistake, instead criticizing Aja for not trusting him. Aja directly presented the intimate photo of Juan and Fa at the supermarket, but Juan defended himself very fluently, quickly denying the clear evidence before her eyes. Aja, disappointed that she couldn't convince Juan, decided she didn't want to talk to him anymore. She thought that if it wasn't a big deal, changing the nanny wouldn't be a problem. But unexpectedly, Juan, who usually listened to her, refused this time. He used their daughter as his excuse, saying that her relationship with Fa was very good, and there was no need to change. Aja, as the mother, didn't have the ability to take good care of her daughter, and shouldn't accuse a good person without reason. After saying that, he angrily left, leaving Aja crying in the kitchen. Juan, after returning to his room, immediately sent a message to comfort Fa. It seemed that Juan had truly fallen for Fa. In this difficult moment, he was still worried and thinking about Fa. However, a phone call from the housekeeper changed everything. It made Juan panic, and he started to doubt Fa. The nanny frequently enjoyed nighttime trysts with the privileged homeowner in the kitchen, and when they were about to recreate that scene tonight, they were caught red-handed by the wife hiding in the shadows. However, the husband, Juan, not only felt no shame but, on the contrary, turned around and blamed Fa for causing unnecessary trouble. But not long after, Juan regretted his favoritism. The family housekeeper, who had suddenly taken leave, received a call from the childcare center, informing her that they had found a suitable nanny for her. The housekeeper was confused because they hadn't invited Fa to work. After investigation and search from the childcare center, they discovered that there was no one named Fa on their list. At this moment, the housekeeper understood that they were at risk of bringing an enemy into their house. She quickly ran and called Juan and Aja, but both of them were unavailable at that moment. In the emergency, the housekeeper carelessly slipped on the stairs and fell backward. After being unconscious for a day, the housekeeper woke up and immediately contacted Juan, informing him that Fa was an unknown person. Upon hearing this news, Juan was scared and understood that he and the woman with an unknown background had created an awkward situation. Juan was worried and hesitated, unsure whether he should reveal Fa's true identity, but he was still captivated by Fa's charm. After careful consideration, Juan called the housekeeper back and asked her to keep the matter a secret for the time being, especially not to mention Fa when talking to anyone. When the housekeeper felt suspicious and confused, she began to think about Juan's nature and guessed that Juan and Fa had fallen for each other. She thought that Juan intended to keep the information secret and therefore wanted to stop and discharged early, but was refused by the nurses. Meanwhile, in the living room, when seeing Juan had changed, Aja couldn't control her tears from flowing. At this moment, her brother-in-law, Tam, who was arguing with his wife, came to comfort Aja. When the two were discussing Mjit's problems, Juan's appearance interrupted their conversation. Tam said goodbye, and Juan voluntarily apologized to Aja, explaining that he was too impatient and had said too many meaningless things to hurt his wife. After that, he said a series of sweet words to comfort Fa. However, Fa, who had been disappointed to the extreme, clearly wasn't listening to Juan's coaxing. Aja informed Juan that tomorrow she would talk to Fa, and if she still acted the same way as before, she would fire Fa herself. Juan agreed with Aja's request to apologize. I think Juan probably only apologized to Aja because he knew about the unclear nature of Fa's identity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have apologized to Aja for sure. Elsewhere, Mjit, having her weakness held by Fa, knew she couldn't wait around and decided to use every means to find out information about Fa to deal with her. However, no matter how many tricks she used, she couldn't find any information about Fa. This made her confused and unsure of what to do. Therefore, she asked for help from her mother and tasked her with collecting information about Fa's identity. The next day, it was unbelievable to see Fa, who had previously been arrogant and disrespectful, voluntarily apologized to Mjit. She even explained that she didn't like being framed and had only made the mistake of provoking them because of the urgent situation. To stop and calm things down, she voluntarily took a few days off. Aja, although she understood that this was just a stalling tactic, still agreed to this request and asked her to leave immediately in the morning. After going home, the housekeeper immediately led Aja outside to talk. The housekeeper asked about the time she was away and whether anything had happened during those days. Aja didn't keep anything a secret and described the details of the previous night's events to the housekeeper. When the housekeeper found out about the indecent behavior between Fa and Juan, she ignored Juan's warning and immediately revealed the truth about Fa's identity. Meanwhile, Juan was restless in his clinic. He recalled that if there was anyone who held a grudge against him, it was the woman whom he had abandoned to marry Aja. Therefore, he called up the files of that woman. However, comparing Fa with that woman, they only had similarities in height, while their bodies and faces were completely different. While Juan was hesitating and wavering, Fa actively sought him out for a date. Juan agreed without thinking too much. Seeing Juan falling into her trap, Fa was ready to carry out her next plan. Pay attention! The woman silently crushed the pill with a knife, then used a rolling pin to grind the pill into powder. Next, she mixed the powdered medicine into the delicious cake she made and placed a small carrot piece as a marker. When the freshly baked food was done, to prevent her husband from noticing anything, she carefully sprinkled the food containing the powdered medicine with some cayenne pepper, which was one of her husband's favorites. This helped mask the smell of the medicine, and she reminded the housekeeper that she had taken her medicine and would go to sleep right away. If her husband Juan came home later, she was to bring him this food and have him eat it. She had put in so much effort just to prove whether the pill that her husband often gave her had a problem or not. Why, after so many years of taking the medicine, had her health not improved but, on the contrary, deteriorated? However, when Aja asked her friend to check the ingredients of the pill, the results hadn't come out yet. When she saw that the pill had no label on it, she thought of Juan's betrayal again. After careful consideration, she decided to take this risky action. In the evening, when Juan came home, he went upstairs as usual to check on his wife. He was only reassured when he saw the medicine bottle on the bedside table had been used. However, to make sure there was no mistake, he found Aja, who was sleeping with her daughter. To confirm whether Aja had actually taken the medicine, Juan approached and called Aja and gently shook her. After a series of actions, he confirmed that Aja had actually fallen asleep. Juan was relieved at this moment, convinced that his wife, Aja, had actually taken the medicine and fallen asleep. But as he was leaving, Aja suddenly opened her eyes. The reason was that Aja wasn't sleeping, but only pretending. She swallowed her tears and didn't dare make a noise, but she still couldn't control her tears from falling. Although they were husband and wife, the things that had just happened made her feel disgusted. She didn't expect Juan to be such a despicable person. Back in the living room, Juan was on the one hand enjoying the delicious food cooked by Aja. On the other hand, he was happy that he had succeeded in winning Aja's favor since the early morning. During the day, Juan and the lucky nanny, Fa, had a warm conversation, and Juan briefly brought up the issue of Fa's fake identity. Since the childcare center had no information about her, Fa was stunned for a moment, not knowing how to respond. When Juan, strong and challenging, asked about her real identity, Fa panicked and didn't know how to explain, starting to cry and saying that she was Juan's fan. Because she admired Juan, she approached him, and to be able to be with him, she tried to become the kind of person Juan liked. She knelt down, asking Juan for forgiveness, even though she had many reasons. However, Juan still reasoned that he couldn't forgive the woman who had deceived him, and told Fa not to contact him for the time being, so that he would have enough time to think. When Fa knew that Juan might be leaving her, she begged Juan not to abandon her, saying that she would do everything he wanted. But it was all just a trick that Juan often used. First, make sex important, then use temptation and bait to turn that person into a free tool of his own. However, as expected, after Juan finished the meal containing the powdered medicine, he began to fall into a deep sleep. Although Aja tried to call him, Juan still didn't move at all, which proved that Aja's guess was correct. After that, Fa quietly left the house and asked Seiji, Juan's secretary, to pick her up and take her to Juan's office. On the way, Seiji asked Aja why she wanted to go to Juan's office. Aja calmly replied to Seiji that she suspected the relationship between Juan and the nanny was not normal. In addition, after many years of marriage, Juan had kept his secrets and hadn't revealed any loopholes at home. She wanted to check if there were any clues in Juan's office. In reality, Aja was just covering up so that others wouldn't find out. She only wanted to go to the clinic to find information about the medicine she had been taking. However, Saji was worried outside the door. When Saji cooperated to take her to the clinic, Aja began searching for information. But Saji was very anxious that Aja would discover her affair with Juan. Aja searched for a long time, but found nothing noteworthy, only taking some photos of her own files. Suddenly, a locked drawer caught her attention, and it seemed to contain an astonishing secret. Unexpectedly, the wife discovered that her husband had taken pictures with hundreds of women. Facing Seiji, she asked if these women were psychological counseling clients. Seiji looked at the photos and became stunned. Scared, she collapsed softly to the ground. With the speed of a gust of wind, she searched for her own photo. When Aja's heart was broken and she was crying in pain, she quickly hid her photo. Aja didn't expect that her gentle and refined husband would have such a peculiar hobby. She didn't dare imagine that his other side would be so scary. On the other side, while sleeping soundly, her husband suddenly woke up. He groggily went to Aja's and her daughter's room. He checked again to see if Aja was in bed, but Aja had left one last trick. She had hidden a large teddy bear under the blanket, making her husband mistakenly believe that she was in bed. After her husband confirmed there was nothing suspicious, he went to bed in his room and fell asleep immediately. Meanwhile, Aja at the clinic didn't know what to do. The beautiful image of her husband in her heart had been shattered. She thought that her husband used the pill to control her for other purposes, but now, she has discovered something very important. She felt her husband was much scarier than she had imagined. She hurriedly asked Saji to retrieve the files from many years ago, but discovered that the files of the female patient had disappeared. It turned out that that woman was also her husband's patient. And when Aja and her husband were not yet married, that woman had always harassed Aja, seeing her as the one who destroyed her happiness, and the culprit who harmed her child. Aja didn't dare imagine what else her husband had hidden. In this blinded marriage, what was her husband's true goal? Now, in this thick fog, Aja could only temporarily refrain from doing anything to avoid losing any opportunities. Stepping carefully, she began to investigate. The next day, Aja's friend from the pharmacy informed her that there had been progress and asked her to bring the pill to meet her. Fa stared at her husband, who was still sleeping soundly. She couldn't understand why her husband treated her like this. She vowed to uncover all the truths and decided to bring her daughter along to meet her friend. Only then would she have a good enough reason to go out without raising her husband's suspicion. As expected, a few hours later, when her husband woke up, he immediately asked the housekeeper about where Aja had gone. The housekeeper said that his wife had taken their daughter out to play and that there was nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, her friend from the pharmacy informed her that the pill Aja was taking was actually a type of antidepressant. If used in large doses, it was equivalent to eating poison every day. leading to self-harm. If this medication was combined with another, it could cause heart disease. Simply put, few people use this medicine now due to its significant side effects, and it was rarely seen nowadays. After hearing her friend's explanation, Aja's heart was once again broken. The truth had come to light, and after a day of enduring it, Aja couldn't accept her husband's evil plan. Meanwhile, at the clinic, because Juan was late, a woman with flashy makeup came looking for him. After experiencing the events of the night before, Saji, the secretary, wasn't enthusiastic about meeting this woman. When the woman contacted Juan, Saji was hiding in a corner and unexpectedly overheard their conversation. Listening to the woman's story, it seemed that Juan had commissioned that woman to introduce a special type of medicine. This medication, if used long-term, would cause many significant side effects and could lead to many complications. The user would easily become tired and forgetful, and their body would also become weaker and weaker. Saji, standing nearby, was very surprised to hear what the woman was saying, curious about why Juan would introduce such a medicine to his clinic. Therefore, she secretly recorded the content that the woman was speaking. Had Juan discovered something and wanted to quickly execute a more serious plan with his wife? Earlier, during dinner, Juan, Aja, and their daughter had a happy meal together, but in reality, both husband and wife had their own hidden agendas. When her daughter mentioned her wish for her mother to get well soon, Juan quickly began telling his daughter about how he was preparing a new medicine for her mother, saying that Aja would recover quickly. Aja looked at her happy daughter. She could only force a fake smile, because that afternoon, Aja, through her friend's investigation at the pharmacy, discovered that the medicine Juan had been using himself for many years had a problem. If the dosage was increased and used long-term, it was equivalent to self-poisoning. But to find out the truth, Aja could only pretend that nothing was wrong. She expressed her gratitude to Juan and said that she was feeling much better and didn't need to increase the dosage anymore. But Juan, feigning concern, insisted that it was for her own good and demanded that Aja continue taking the medicine. This also proved that Juan wanted her to disappear right now. Looking at her husband's hypocritical face, she desperately wanted to expose Juan immediately. But after calming down, she could only hold back. Now wasn't the time to confront Juan face to face. In the evening, when it was time to go to bed, Aja felt troubled. When Juan came to urge her to take her medicine soon, she pretended to say she needed to go to the bathroom first, before coming out to take the pill. When Juan saw her go into the bathroom, he temporarily left the room. When she saw Juan leave, Aja carefully stepped out of the bathroom, and after confirming that Juan had left the room, she quickly poured all of the new pills out and took a picture to send to her friend at the pharmacy, asking her to help her find out about this medicine, and asking her to call her to let her know. No need to reply to the message. After sending it, Aja immediately deleted all the chat history and threw all the pills into the toilet. After confirming that all the pills in the toilet had been flushed away, Aja hurriedly ran to drink a glass of water, and then covered herself under the blanket, pretending to be reading a book. After this series of steps, Juan had just returned to the room. After confirming that Aja had taken the medicine, Juan came to the bed and lay near Aja like a child, trying to be affectionate. However, Aja rejected him, criticizing Juan about how he and Fa still hadn't given a satisfactory answer about what was going on between them. Juan looked at Aja in surprise, asking her if she was sure she had taken the medicine. Perhaps due to the emotional turmoil of the day, to avoid revealing anything, Aja immediately pretended to be tired and said she was sleepy. Immediately, she pretended to fall asleep next to Juan. Then, with suspicion, Juan wanted to check if she was pretending to sleep, and the scene at the beginning of the story happened. Feeling powerful, Juan probably felt lonely and texted his sister-in-law, Imjit, inviting her to come over for a few drinks together. Imjit, who had witnessed Juan be such a despicable man, immediately replied that they were over, and suggested that Juan not bother her anymore. On one side, the person Imjit had hired to investigate the nanny, Fa, had made progress. While Imjit was driving on the road, she received a phone call from an unknown number. The person on the other end informed her that the person Imjit was investigating had previously worked at his car shop and was currently using a fake name, also warning that this woman was very dangerous and that she needed to be careful. The car shop owner said that if Imjit wanted to know more, she could come find him. As their conversation was ongoing, Imjit's mobile phone received an anonymous message. In it were intimate photos of her with Juan, along with a photo of her husband, Tam. This was clearly a threat to her. Imjit panicked, asking the car shop owner to send her his address, and then hanging up the phone. She hurriedly contacted her husband to ask him where he was. During their discussion, from the phone's audio, she recognized Fa's voice. Furious, Imjit stepped hard on the accelerator, and an unexpected accident occurred. Unable to brake in time, she had a direct traffic collision. And would Imjit, who knew Fa's secret, be in danger of losing her life? On the other side, Aja accidentally saw a message, inside which were photos of her younger sister and her husband being intimate. She was shocked beyond belief, her hands trembling. She never imagined that her closest family member had also betrayed her. She carefully recalled the threats from the nanny, Fa, towards her sister, Imjit, and was surprised to discover that those words were true. While she was crying in pain, the warm Juan came to her side and took her hand to comfort her. Aja, overwhelmed with disgust, forcefully pushed his hand away. But Juan thought that her mood was overly anxious about Imjit's accident, which had caused her to become agitated. Aja was heartbroken beyond measure and couldn't endure it anymore. Just before this, Aja had received a response from her friend at the pharmacy, learning that if the new pill that Juan had given her was combined with the previous one, it would cause side effects leading to heart disease. Knowing that Juan was plotting against her, Aja was extremely worried and scared. When she wanted to ask the housekeeper about Juan, she suddenly received a message about her younger sister, Imjit's accident. She rushed to the clinic. Fortunately, because Imjit had been driving relatively safely, the accident didn't put her in any danger, but she still had some injuries that required treatment at the hospital. While Aja was processing the admission procedures for her sister, the staff accidentally gave her the personal belongings that Imjit had left behind. Then, everything happened as in the opening scene. Knowing the truth, Aja cried alone in the toilet. The tears flowed non-stop, and she had almost cried them all out. Even the breath within her was gradually running out. In the hospital room, Aja looked at Juan with hatred to the bone. She wanted to punish him for the despicable things he had done. Looking at Juan's hypocritical face, Aja couldn't control herself and started to imagine herself using a vase to deal with Juan forcefully. Just at this moment, she was called awake by her sister. Imjit took her hand, seemingly wanting to share a message. Aja leaned in to hear. Imjit, with a hoarse and weak voice, whispered the nanny's name. Fa. There's a problem. However, because of her injuries and the unclear way she was speaking, plus Juan understood what was happening, he quickly pulled Aja out of the room. Returning home, Aja looked at Juan and her daughter playing happily, and her heart was filled with different emotions. Now, she no longer had the ability to be with the person who had hurt her, nor could she give her daughter to a father with an abnormal psychology. She didn't know how she would explain things to her daughter in the future, but she could only face reality, step by step, to soon find enough evidence to bring him to justice. The next day, Aja went alone to Imjit's hospital room. When Imjit greeted Aja, her sister, who had always been gentle, now spoke with cold words. When Aja threw the phone to Imjit, her sister felt that something was wrong. Aja explained that she had accidentally read the messages yesterday, tried entering Imjit's birthday as the password, and successfully unlocked the phone. She had seen the things that she shouldn't have seen. From here, Imjit knew that she couldn't hide anything anymore. She knelt down in pain, begging for forgiveness from her sister. Faced with her sister whom she had once been so close with, Aja was in pain and didn't know how to decide. In the end, would she choose to forgive her younger sister or not? Now, knowing about the relationship between her younger sister, Imjit, and Juan, after hearing Imjit's story, Aja realized that Imjit, when she was young and naive, had also been captivated by Juan's sweet talk, leading to the subsequent series of events. Therefore, Aja decided to forgive her younger sister, who had been captivated by Juan's sweet words, leading to the following situations. Therefore, now she had to quickly gather evidence and expose Juan's true nature. From Imjit's story, Aja also learned that Fa had had plastic surgery and faked her identity, and that she and the obstetric patient that Aja had misdiagnosed before were the same person. Were these connections related to Juan? Imjit advised Aja that, if she wanted to know the truth, she needed to visit the former boss where Fa had worked before. Therefore, Aja used the excuse that her life hadn't been going smoothly lately to inform Juan that she had decided to go on a retreat and pray at the church for 3 days. Juan, after considering it for a while, agreed to Aja's request. However, he refused to let Aja drive herself and expressed that he would drive her to the location. It seemed that Juan still didn't trust Aja. The next day, Juan personally drove Aja to the church gate and indicated that he wanted to take her inside the church. Aja refused Juan, using the excuse that men couldn't enter the church. Juan reminded Aja that she must take her medicine during these days. Watching Aja's back as she left, Juan hesitated before finally leaving. To make sure everything was safe, Juan contacted the church manager to confirm that there really was a retreat going on these days before he felt relieved and left. When Aja saw Juan drive away, she quickly turned around to catch a taxi. But Juan, overly worried, suddenly turned back to check everything. Luckily, Aja managed to hide behind the taxi seat in time, avoiding being discovered. So, Aja arrived at the place that the church manager had pointed out to her. During their conversation, the car shop owner talked about the time before Fa had plastic surgery. He described Fa's excellence at work, but over time, he had noticed that there was a problem with Fa's mental health. She often had unreasonable conflicts with other employees. At that time, he had suggested that she go for treatment, but then he found out that she and a certain doctor were dating, and she became pregnant. However, soon after, she was mysteriously abandoned, and her baby was also gone. At that time, the shop owner felt sorry for her, not only providing financial support, but also letting her stay at his place. Gradually, the relationship between the shop owner and her developed. To help her recover, the shop owner paid for her plastic surgery, but the joy didn't last long. One night suddenly, there was a commotion, and Fa had robbed the shop owner of his money and even injured his leg. After that, she disappeared without a trace. At this point, Aja and the shop owner exchanged photos of Fa from before, confirming that they were the same person as they had said. Meanwhile, at home, Aja's husband Juan wasn't sitting idle either. He was secretly contacting a lawyer, quietly plotting something. At this moment, Juan was planning to hide information in order to transfer the fortune that Aja's father had left behind. He secretly hired a private lawyer and told the lawyer about his wife's fragile health. He was afraid that if something happened to Fa, her assets could be disputed with her biological sister. Using the excuse of protecting his daughter's interests, Juan proposed to temporarily transfer all the assets to his name and return them to his daughter when she came of age. However, the lawyer required Aja's written consent, as that was also the requirement of Fa's father's will. All decisions needed to have her consent. After that, Juan presented a pre-written contract for the lawyer to review. The lawyer said that after the review was completed, he would let him know. Juan requested that the lawyer complete it within 3 days, as he wanted Aja to sign the contract after she completed her 3-day retreat, and emphasized that the lawyer should not tell Fa so as not to affect her spiritual practice. However, Juan couldn't have imagined that Aja had long been aware of things, and that her secret retreat was also for the purpose of investigating the hidden situation. She had learned from the car shop owner that the nanny, Fa, was the patient who she had given the wrong medicine to, causing her to lose her child. She suspected that this incident was related to Juan, so she had asked her friends at the pharmacy to help investigate the address of the drug supplier she had used in the incident. The next day, Aja went to find the drug supplier. When she arrived, she unexpectedly found out that the female employee at the shop was someone she knew. After their conversation, the employee revealed that she and Aja had worked at the same clinic before, and at that time, her main job was in the pharmacy. Hearing about Aja's purpose in coming here, the employee recounted the story between her and Juan. Initially, before Juan and Aja became a couple, Juan would often approach her by asking about information on medicines. The two had a period of getting to know each other and had a relationship, but when Fa appeared, Juan suddenly disappeared. One day, about 3 or 4 months later, Aja brought 3 types of medicine and asked her about their effects on pregnant women. The strange thing was that not long after, the incident where Aja had an accident causing her to mistake the medicine occurred. Half a year later, from another colleague, she heard that Juan had asked that person to search for a medicine with the same color but with different effects, perhaps for easy replacement. When this information was pieced together, Aja realized that she wasn't the one at fault in the medication mix-up. It was possible that Juan had switched the medicines that she had prescribed, leading to the incident that followed, and forcing her to take responsibility and be scolded by everyone. However, even though she had a clearer understanding of the details of the story, Aja still had doubts. She knew that Juan had used the medicine to harm Fa to cover up a media issue, but at this time, she still didn't know that Juan was actually using the medicine to plot against her, with the goal of seizing her inheritance. On the other hand, Juan also seemed to realize that Fa's identity wasn't as simple as he had thought. Therefore, he actively contacted Fa, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, and began preparing for the next step of his plan. To obtain the billion-dollar fortune from the girl he secretly loved, he abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and married that girl. Juan suspected that Fa was his previously abandoned girlfriend, who had undergone plastic surgery. To prove his suspicion was correct, Juan confessed that he had abandoned a girl he had deeply loved. Even now, he was constantly filled with regret. Initially, they had a bright future, but they were taken advantage of and could not meet again. When she realized that the girl Juan was talking about was herself, Fa asked Juan about the rest of the story. Seeing his prey take the bait, Juan started to say the opposite, talking about how that girl had become pregnant. Then she was schemed against, and her medicine was switched, causing her to miscarry. At that time, Juan wanted to visit the girl, but was ultimately stopped by others. Then, when he investigated, he discovered that the person behind all of the schemes was his current wife, Aja. Here, Juan's acting talent must be acknowledged. He was able to whitewash himself completely. Therefore, it was only natural that Fa would confess that she was the woman he had once abandoned. After Juan got the answer he wanted, he continued his acting, saying that he didn't hate her for not being able to have children, and that he would live with her for the rest of his life to make up for it. He would take Fa away from Aja and start a new life. Truly, a woman's heart is easily moved. Hearing such words, she immediately believed him. Therefore, Juan began to implement the next step of his plan, taking advantage of Fa's lingering feelings to subtly hypnotize her and support him in doing something that he didn't dare to do. On the other hand, Aja, on her way back, contacted her lawyer to discuss some issues. During their conversation, the lawyer informed Aja that Juan had asked him to review a contract. However, Aja said that she knew nothing about this matter. Upon learning that Juan had asked him to do so, Aja stopped the car and thought seriously. She pretended that she might need additional clauses and asked the lawyer to bring the contract for her to review when the time came. At this moment, Aja finally realized that Juan's true purpose was her inheritance. The next day, Juan arrived as promised to pick up Fa at the monastery gate. Although they looked happy, in reality, they had long been ignoring each other. After returning home, Juan pretended to care about Aja's spiritual retreat, and then immediately transitioned to the main topic, which was that he knew a friend who had information about a new medicine being researched abroad that could be helpful for Aja's health condition. He had asked his friend to help import that medicine, and would be able to receive it shortly. At this moment, Aja could only maintain a look of incomprehension. Even though she knew that Juan was preparing a new medicine for her, she could still only thank Juan for his concern for her. In addition, Fa also agreed to try the new medicine. After that, to avoid raising Juan's suspicion, Aja took the medicine right in front of him. As expected, in the evening, Juan assumed that Aja had fallen asleep after taking the medicine. He quietly woke up and checked Fa's phone, searching for clues. Unfortunately, he didn't find any significant information that was noteworthy. But this scene was seen by Aja, who was pretending to sleep. The reason was that before going home, Aja had prepared a phone that looked exactly the same and a new phone number, along with the same looking vitamins. Then she replaced the pill that Juan had prepared for her to prevent future problems. She also destroyed all the related items from her retreat days. The next morning, when Juan took his daughter out of the house, Aja sought out the housekeeper and asked her that, after receiving a notice from her, immediately take her daughter to her stepmother's house for a while, because sooner or later, the family would have a transformation. The housekeeper agreed, and when she wanted to continue discussing, Aja interrupted and assured her that she would be fine. Had Aja done this to start her counterattack against Juan, you can imagine that this talented man, for his own selfish purposes, wouldn't even choose his food, not even with women past their prime, and his actions were only to take advantage of their weaknesses and character to do unscrupulous things. Now, to harm his wife and seize her assets, he even sacrificed and took advantage of his friends in the pharmacy to obtain a new imported medicine. This medicine could cause someone to pass away quietly, without them even knowing. At this time, Juan expressed his gratitude to Fa and made a date with her for the evening to enjoy a special dinner. After that, he took Fa away, and that night, while Fa was secretly enjoying the darkness, waiting for Juan to arrive, she suddenly received a set of intimate photos of her and Juan. The sender also requested help from her. At this moment, Fa panicked and was confused, not knowing what to do, but she felt that the other party didn't seem to have any bad intentions. Hesitating, unsure of what to do, Juan called at just the right time. When she was about to ask Juan about the photos, knowing that Juan had only called to cancel their date, she angrily decided to not tell Juan for the time being, wanting to observe the other party's true intentions. Therefore, she replied to the other party, letting them know that she would be willing to discuss things. The sender of the photos was Juan's wife, Aja. The source of the photos was thanks to Saji helping her obtain them. Initially, when Aja discovered the photos last time, she was too heartbroken and forgot to take evidence. Therefore, she had asked Saji to take advantage of the time that Juan left the office to sneak in and use the key to open the drawer, then take photos of all the pictures and send them to Fa. Saji, after discovering Juan's secrets with Aja in the office, knew that she had been deceived by Juan. She voluntarily agreed to help Aja. After Aja had done what she needed to do with the photos, she continued to contact her friend in the pharmacy. informing them that Juan was about to prepare a new, unknown imported medicine. She would find an opportunity to take a picture of it, hoping that her friend could help identify it, which would be convenient for future evidence. When the other person learned that her husband was becoming increasingly insane, they advised Aja that she didn't need to risk herself and shouldn't play cat and mouse with Juan anymore. Aja expressed her gratitude and said that she already had a plan. After that, Aja contacted her lawyer, requesting that he carry out her plan for the will. While Juan was canceling his date with Fa, he went to Fa's house and revealed his intention to transfer her assets to his name. Fa informed him that she didn't care about those external things. As long as she could live with Juan forever, that would be enough. However, Juan said that for her to have a better life, he had to reclaim what belonged to her from before. After Juan's persuasion, Fa expressed her support. Now Fa had been hypnotized by Juan, lost her own self, and became someone who unconditionally listened to Juan. She said that whatever Juan wanted to do, she would support him, even if it meant asking her to risk herself. Juan was secretly delighted in his heart. That was exactly what he had been waiting for. He continued to pretend to be worried, saying that everything wasn't as simple as she thought, because he was worried that Aja might be unwilling to transfer the assets. Fa said that she could help him solve this problem, and this was clearly one of the plans that Juan wanted to use her for. Juan continued his acting, pretending that he didn't want her to be reckless and commit a crime, but Fa was determined to help him solve all the problems. Having achieved his goal, Juan continued to strengthen his hypnosis of Fa, in case his plan failed. On one side, when Aja learned from her daughter that Juan wanted to bring Fa home, she decided to implement her plan immediately. Therefore, she took out her phone and sent a message to 4 women, inviting them to meet with her and telling them that she was Juan's wife. Would these 4 women come to help Aja as promised? Those women only had to take a look at that man's smile, and they could immediately conclude that he was their husband's illegitimate child, because the boy's smile was exactly the same as their husband's smile. However, their prediction was correct. The boy's mother told Aja the truth. The boy was her son with Juan. At that time, Aja hadn't met Juan yet. To get help from her and get close to her, Juan had taken advantage of her and then abandoned her when she became pregnant. However, she had decided to withdraw because she was timid and afraid of risk. She quit her job and moved here, living in seclusion and raising her child alone. If it wasn't through Aja this time, she wouldn't have known how cruel Juan could be to achieve his goals and harm so many women. The woman, who had kept her secret for many years, promised Aja that if necessary, she would appear to help identify Juan. At this moment, Aja had gathered the 4 victims that she knew about. But clearly, the number of people who had been harmed by Juan wasn't just them 4. When everyone arrived, they were all surprised about each other's identities. Aja once again introduced herself, and introduced everyone's identities in detail. Then, she went straight to the point, informing them that the purpose of the meeting was to confront Juan. Saji, the secretary, questioned how Aja knew that she was also a victim. Aja said that on the day when they discovered the photos of Juan and many other women together, she witnessed Saji hiding her own photo. At that time, she couldn't confirm whether Saji was trustworthy or not, so she didn't reveal it. However, after her considerations, she concluded that Saji was a trustworthy person. A newcomer, Pat, questioned the photos and wondered why only 3 people had come instead of the 4 that were expected. Aja calmly answered, explaining that the number of people involved in the photos that she had seen was in the hundreds, and that she couldn't invite everyone to come. Saji, who had witnessed the photos, also confirmed what Aja said, and explained that the other person hadn't come because she was far away. Therefore, she could only discuss this matter with them together. After a few hours of discussion, everyone described how they had been harmed by Juan, including Aja herself. She did this only to gain everyone's trust and resolve their worries, so that they had the opportunity to see Juan's true nature. Pat expressed her gratitude to Aja for letting her know the truth, but she couldn't help, because if what she did was revealed, she would lose her current job. However, she would provide the name of the new medicine to Aja, and promised not to reveal today's meeting. After that, she left, and Aja didn't force her to stay. Seiji thanked Aja for forgiving the things she had done. Aja said that everyone was a victim, and she wouldn't force them to help unless they volunteered. Now, even though she knew Juan was plotting to harm her, her mind was still blank, and she didn't know what to do. When she thought about taking action, she thought about her young daughter with Juan. She didn't want the effects of the incident to leave a shadow on her children's childhood, because in the end, the child was innocent. Indeed, a parent's heart is astonishing. However, Juan on the other side didn't think that way. He urged and hinted that Fa should quickly help him obtain her inheritance. Therefore, Fa contacted the people she knew, including the bad guy from before, the one who had collided with and caused an accident to the nanny, who was supposed to start working at AJA's house. He was also the one Fa had hired to be able to successfully become a nanny and infiltrate AJA's family in the first place. This time, her target was Aja. She told him not to hesitate. There was no need to kill anyone, but he had to seriously injure her. After that, Fa sent the information and photo of Aja's car to the bad guy. On one side, Aja was preparing to leave the house to meet her stepmother and Imjit to discuss matters. She was holding her car keys, ready to drive. But would Aja be able to escape this accident successfully? A man quietly poured all his girlfriend's prenatal vitamins out of the bottle, and then poured in pills that looked exactly the same, except for the different effects. Then, he hurriedly cleaned up the spilled pills. But at this moment, his girlfriend unexpectedly returned home. He, worried, quickly placed the pills in his jeans pocket, but didn't notice that one pill had fallen on the ground. When his girlfriend returned home and turned on the lights, she was surprised to see a figure suddenly appear. When she recognized that it was her boyfriend, she happily asked her boyfriend what he was doing. Perhaps because the quality of the jeans was too good, Juan had taken a long time stuffing all the pills into his pocket. He pretended that nothing was wrong, acting as if everything was normal. The next day, when his girlfriend took her medicine and a pill fell, when she bent down to pick it up, she noticed a pill on the floor. She carefully observed it and realized that although the color was the same, there was a slight difference. However, she didn't think too much and still chose to trust Juan. But little did she know that taking the substitute pill long-term would cause her to miscarry quietly. When Juan's plot succeeded, he would find a way to abandon his girlfriend, Fa, and blame Aja for causing the miscarriage. Then, while Fa was blaming herself, he would take the opportunity to get to know and become the lover of another girl, the wealthy girl, Aja. From here, he would ascend to the pinnacle of life. Now, knowing that his old lover, Fa, had changed her face to seek revenge, he used his schemes, taking the opportunity to have Fa help him eliminate his wife, Aja. That way, he could naturally inherit all of Aja's assets. Fa would also commit a crime and be arrested, never bothering him again. When Fa was preparing to create an accident to cause Aja to have a traffic accident, according to his instructions, a kind reminder from the housekeeper saved Aja's life. "Can you drive after taking your medicine?" At this moment, Aja also realized that she couldn't reveal any clues. Therefore, Aja chose to use a taxi to go outside. On the other side, while Fa was secretly happy about Aja being in danger, she unexpectedly received an anonymous message from Aja. In the message, 2 photos of the same type of medicine were included. This seemed to be an indication that her previous miscarriage was caused by someone switching the medicine to harm her. The person who supplied the medicine to her was Juan himself. Just at this moment, she also discovered a problem with the medicine, but Fa still didn't believe the truth. She blamed herself, wondering who would want to destroy the relationship between her and Juan. However, when she called, no one answered. Therefore, she sent a message to ask about the other party's intention. Aja kept her secret and said that she was also a victim. However, Fa on the other side still refused to believe her. When Aja sent a photo of Juan and another woman in bed, Fa, Juan's lover, began to lose control of her spirit and emotions. While at her stepmother's house, Aja brought the will that she had asked the lawyer to prepare. The will stated that, if something happened to Fa, all of her assets would be transferred to her stepmother to temporarily manage. And then, when her daughter grew up, they would be given to her. The will had already been signed. Her stepmother was surprised as to why she would suddenly make a will, especially since Aja had not been on good terms with her stepmother for most of the time before. Logically and emotionally, she shouldn't have given her stepmother management rights. Aja apologized to her stepmother and said that ever since her mother passed away, she had never forgiven her father's remarriage. Her stepmother's misunderstanding also stemmed from there to take advantage of the relationship. In recent years, after living together, they had come to see each other as family. Especially after Aja had become a mother and had a family of her own, she had truly understood the value of family. Her younger sister, Imjit, and her stepmother, who were beside her, were both moved to tears. When Aja was preparing to leave, Imjit volunteered to drive her home, but Aja explained that she didn't want her family to know about where she was going, and this included the housekeeper, because the housekeeper had taken care of Juan for many years and considered him her own son. Although she wouldn't participate in anything bad, she was still an untrustworthy person. However, to prevent emergencies, she wanted as few people as possible to know about it. Imjit couldn't believe that her sister still trusted her like that. After yesterday's meeting, her sister had kept her promise and hadn't told their mother about anything. She felt like she owed Aja a debt, and she didn't want to leave her sister to face things alone. If anything happened, she was to be notified immediately. Meanwhile, Fa lost control, and after seeing Juan leave from the shadows, she unexpectedly appeared in Juan's office. Despite Seiji's attempts to stop her, she directly broke in. Notice that while Juan was backing the car into the garage, suddenly, the rearview camera showed an unidentified figure, which startled him, and he quickly turned his head to check if it was Fa. When Juan looked at the rearview camera in detail, he realized that it was indeed Fa. He quickly got out of the car, helped Fa stand up, and warned her that such an action was very dangerous. He asked Fa to go ahead and wait for him in his office. Looking at Fa's lost and dazed figure, Juan felt that something was not right. The reason was that Fa, after breaking into Juan's office, had compared the photos on her phone with the scene in the office. When she examined it carefully, she discovered the truth behind the photos and became out of control. Holding the photos, she asked Saji about the identity of the woman in the pictures. Saji, seeing Fa lose her mind, was scared and shrank into the corner, not daring to say anything. Not getting the answer she wanted, Fa became increasingly angry and wanted to attack Saji. Seiji, who was not used to such a sight, was terrified and backed into the corner, crying and telling Fa that the woman in the photo was Juan's patient. After getting the answer she wanted, and seeing that Fa's mood had calmed down a bit, Saji quickly called Asia to take the opportunity to escape. However, Fa had noticed and captured Saji immediately, intending to make a live video. At this moment, Fa also received a call from Juan. From the tone over the phone, Asia could roughly guess what was happening. She hurriedly took another phone and called Saji back. When Saji answered the phone, not only did she know that Fa was a victim, she also knew immediately that something was wrong. Asia only said one sentence and immediately hung up, then sent all the photos of the other victims to Fa. Fa, upon seeing the various photos, her emotions completely collapsed. During this time, Asia told Saji not to report this incident, or else they would regret it later. If they did, Juan would also run away. She told Saji to continue to stay hidden and let Fa continue her actions. At this moment, Juan returned home. Asia quickly hung up the phone and hid the spare phone. Juan asked Fa why she had gone out alone. Fa pretended that her skin wasn't feeling well and said that she had gone to see a doctor. After that, Juan hugged Asia and led her into the house. When they met the housekeeper, Asia told him to remind her that if she felt uncomfortable, she should let him know. And the housekeeper also realized that Asia had initially said she would have lunch with her stepmother. So how had it turned into being sick and going to the doctor? However, the housekeeper understood but didn't say anything. Meanwhile, Fa, who was still at Juan's office, after making a scene and venting her anger, suddenly left the office immediately. On the way, in a daze, she kept calling Juan, but because Asia was with Juan, Juan didn't dare to answer the phone. However, Asia, who had learned the truth, knew that the call was from Fa, and she asked Juan to quickly answer the call. Juan, who was good at acting, after answering the phone, managed to explain well, pretending that it was a client asking about their health condition. Asia just stood on the side, silently watching Juan act. When Juan hung up, he told Asia that he was about to go out. Asia directly exposed that Juan would be going to the office and informed him that Saji had called to tell her that Fa had gone to Juan's office and made a scene. Juan, when he knew that his wife knew he was still in a relationship with Fa, hurriedly approached to comfort Asia, telling her not to think too much, and promising that when he returned, he would explain everything to Fa privately later. On the way, Juan angrily hit the steering wheel. He didn't know where things had gone wrong. Even though he was on the verge of success, the situation had become so awkward. He contacted Fa and started to use sweet words to comfort her, and made a date to meet at their old place. On the other hand, Asia at home was still adding fuel to the fire. She again sent a private video to Fa, this time a video from an anonymous source. The content was about Pat introducing that she had worked at the pharmacy before, and at that time, Juan had asked her to prescribe a medicine. She also asked her to provide a type of foreign medicine that looked like the vitamin that Juan had prescribed for Fa, but had different effects, a medicine that could cause a miscarriage. This caused Fa, who had started to calm down a bit, to once again collapse. She was alone and waiting for Juan, and then, the events as described at the beginning happened. Juan, when he arrived at his office, after cleaning his face in the restroom, suddenly, Fa appeared behind him, with one hand holding a utility knife, and her other hand was injured, with tomato sauce spilled all over the floor. The cruel man, who had charmed thousands of women, now, because of his goal to steal his wife's $100 billion fortune, completely disregarded his expertise in psychology. He used his professional hypnotism techniques to control others to commit crimes on his behalf. Juan used Fa's chaotic mental state to hypnotize her into helping him harm his wife, Asia. And Fa's transformation into this state was also due to Juan's dedication. The reason was that just a few hours ago, Juan had been extremely surprised when he saw Fa acting crazy. But after calming down, Juan, as a professional psychologist, advised Fa not to act rashly, and that if there was anything wrong, she could just tell him. Fa asked Juan if he was the one who had murdered her child. Juan was shocked, not expecting that she knew about this, but immediately, he used his professional skills to start talking nonsense, telling Fa that he had failed to protect the child and that he was responsible. After that, he continued to blame and frame Asia, while pretending that he wanted to check her wound with a towel, but Fa didn't believe him. Juan, between comforting her and taking the opportunity to grab a bottle of medicine that could make people fall asleep. When Fa asked Juan about the relationship between him and many female patients, Juan continued to defend himself, saying that it was before he knew Fa. At this moment, Fa was no longer able to distinguish between the truth and Juan's lies. Her mind was in chaos once again. Juan continued to talk badly, distracting her. At this point, Juan saw that his words had begun to take effect, and he continued to talk vaguely about their past stories. As a result, he became too immersed in his role, and unintentionally revealed the substitution of Fa's medicine, which Fa had never mentioned during the whole time. It was clearly a self-confession, without needing to be defeated. While crying and sobbing, Juan was immediately exposed by Fa. Juan immediately held back his tears, and was a little stunned. Seeing that the situation was not right, he got ready with a bottle of medicine. When Fa lost control and wanted to end them both, Juan used the medicine in time to make her fall asleep. On one side, Asia, at home, was anxious and felt like something was about to happen. She helped her daughter pack her luggage, using gentle white lies, and took her daughter to her stepmother's house, saying she would stay there for a few days. The housekeeper asked Asia about her specific plans, but Asia didn't explain in detail, only telling the housekeeper not to worry, and that she wanted to have a confrontation with Juan. The housekeeper warned Asia that today she had overheard Juan talking to Fa on the phone, and that they had some kind of plan. She advised Asia to be careful, and confessed that she couldn't help Juan anymore, as she had tried to advise him before, but he continued to make mistakes without any remorse. When Asia was still hesitating, the housekeeper encouraged her again to do what she needed to do. It was time for Juan to receive his deserved punishment. After seeing her daughter and the housekeeper off, Juan contacted Asia to report that he was safe, saying that he and Fa had finished their discussion, and that he wouldn't be coming home tonight. He would stay at the office. After that, Juan led Fa to the office, and began to use the professional techniques he had learned over the years. As expected, Fa, who had completely broken down, was successfully hypnotized by Juan. When Fa arrived at Aja's house to carry out her cruel act, Juan had meticulously prepared an alibi for himself. He specifically went to the gym to work out and run. After Fa arrived at Aja's house, she trashed the house and smashed Aja and Juan's wedding photo. This incident woke up Aja, who had been sleeping soundly. Aja was surprised as to how Fa could enter her house. Fa explained that she had taken the key from Juan's office. Knowing that Fa's mood was unstable, Aja was very scared. Fa pointed the blame towards Aja, claiming that she was the one who had murdered her child. No matter how Aja explained, Fa still believed that the cause of everything was Aja. Aja told her that Juan had also tried to get rid of her by switching her medicine, but Fa had been too deeply hypnotized by Juan and couldn't be woken up. She thought it was all a plot by Aja, and that she wouldn't trust her anymore. Therefore, she continued to fall into a state of uncontrolled madness, screaming and directly attacking Aja. But she had lost control and quickly overpowered Aja, firmly grasping her neck. When Aja was about to run out of strength, she turned around, grabbed a utility knife, and continued towards Aja, attacking forcefully again, striking without hesitation. At the gym, Juan felt relieved, reassured that he had timed it perfectly to go home and witness his accomplishments. Would Aja escape this predicament? How truly evil could this man be? He stood by and watched his wife lying in a pool of blood, begging for help, but he ignored her. He even mocked his wife for bringing it upon herself. Faced with the risk of losing her life, his wife still asked her husband to lend a hand, but Juan was unmoved. Because it was all his plot, Juan recounted everything he had done to Aja, and said, "From beginning to end, I had no feelings for you. I got close to you only to get your fortune. I also directed Fa to harm you, but I didn't expect you to survive." This erased Aja's last hope of survival. Juan insisted that Aja should leave peacefully, rather than enduring and breaking down in pain. and promised that he would take care of their child. When Juan saw Aja desperate, crying, begging him not to do this cruel man had absolutely no compassion. He stepped aside, confidently drank some water, and watched Aja suffer, struggling until Aja took her last breath. After checking and confirming that Aja had passed away, Juan proudly walked over to her, started to play the good guy, pretending to be compassionate, and reported the case. Not to mention crying, that was already pitiful enough. It didn't take long for the police and the ambulance to arrive at the house. When everyone rushed to the scene of the crime, everyone stood still. Juan turned his head, unable to believe what was happening. He even saw Aja, who had been lying motionless on the ground and had stopped breathing, stand up normally as if nothing had happened. The astonishing thing was that Juan's plot had long been discovered by Aja. Worried about Aja, Mjit specifically came to her house and lived with her. While they were chatting idly, they received a call from Saji, the secretary, and learned about Juan's plot. Because Saji stayed at the office to clean up the messed up documents late into the night, and as she was preparing to leave, she saw Juan secretly bring Fa to the office. Saji hurriedly hid to the side to observe, and discovered that Juan was indeed using hypnotic techniques to make Fa attack Aja. When Saji learned the truth, she shared this information with Aja. Aja asked Saji to come to her house to help, and through analysis, they concluded that Juan was using hypnosis on Fa to take advantage of the situation. Therefore, they set a trap, waiting for Fa to come to the house. When Fa arrived at the house, Mjit and Saji were responsible for recording and collecting evidence. Just as Fa was about to carry out the crime, Mjit appeared in time and knocked Fa unconscious, stopping her from attacking Aja. After that, everyone worked together to restrain Fa, who was still not fully conscious. Meanwhile, the real culprit, Juan, had chosen the perfect time to return home and was preparing to enjoy the fruits of his labor. When he saw Fa lying on the floor, seemingly lifeless, Juan didn't care about Fa, but went to check Fa's wounds first. He wanted to put all the blame on Fa. After confirming that everything was going according to plan, a scene like the one at the beginning of the story took place. At this moment, when Juan saw Aja still healthy and safe, he realized he'd been tricked. He panicked, not knowing what had happened here. Aja, seeing Juan still lying, pulled out the recording of Juan confessing his crimes just moments ago, and shared it with everyone present. Clearly, the villain ultimately couldn't avoid talking too much. Juan continued to reassure everyone, saying that Aja was the one with depression, not to believe her words and actions. He even tried to take Aja's mobile phone in front of everyone, but was stopped by a police officer nearby. Meanwhile, Mjit and Saji, from the inside, came out and said that they had audio and video recordings of everything that had just happened, asking Juan to stop all his evil actions and not to struggle anymore. But Juan still wouldn't give up. Even in defeat, he wanted to drag others down with him. He accused them of plotting to kill Fa. However, Aja told him that Fa wasn't dead. Juan couldn't believe it and went to where Fa was lying to check, only to discover that Fa was only unconscious. Perhaps it was due to his negligence and carelessness that they had managed to trick him. Meanwhile, a police officer nearby asked Juan to confess truthfully and not to lie anymore. Now, all the evidence was against Juan. Juan couldn't say anything else and could only give up resisting and had to accept the investigation. In the end, he was gifted a one-way ticket to prison, but due to Fa's unstable mental state, she couldn't be considered a reliable witness. The evidence provided was still too little, not enough to heavily convict Juan. He could only be sentenced to a few years in prison. Would Juan change after his release? After many years of marriage, her husband's strange coldness wasn't because he was not okay in other ways, but because he was too okay in other ways. Abandoned as a child, Juan carried a psychological wound. Growing up, he had relationships with hundreds of women to release his childhood dissatisfaction, and his wife, Aja, was also one of the victims. Juan's true purpose in marrying her was only to obtain Aja's family assets. Now, his cleverness was outsmarted by his own cleverness. The plot to murder his wife, which Juan himself had set up, was exposed on the spot. Finally, he received the deserved punishment of silver handcuffs, companions for his crimes. The wife came to confront her husband, the main actor in the assassination play, and bid him farewell. She said that she would take her daughter to live abroad for a while to avoid trouble. This was to protect her daughter's life from the influence of her father's mistakes. Aja revealed to Juan that she had once given him a chance. If Juan had chosen to save her at that time, perhaps she would have had a bit of compassion. She might have forgiven him. Regrettably, at that moment, Juan was still blind and unrepentant. Finally, she gave Juan the wedding ring and a picture drawn by their daughter. She told him that in the future, their daughter would be like her, having nothing to do with him anymore. She reminded Juan that he must find a new way of life and repent in the years to come. Later, start anew, and never again use the darkness of his childhood to hurt innocent girls. Juan begged Aja not to cut off contact between him and their daughter, but Aja still coldly refused him, despite Juan's pleas, even though he was sobbing. In the prison cell, Juan looked at the picture his daughter had drawn of their family of 3. He was remorseful and cried. Perhaps at this moment, he truly regretted it, but unfortunately it was too late. What was lost could never be regained. When Aja and the housekeeper parted ways at home, the housekeeper asked Aja to forgive Juan. Aja said she had already forgiven him, but from now on, they would have no connection whatsoever. The housekeeper apologized to Aja on behalf of Juan, saying that she would take care of him. Even though there was no blood relation, she had considered Juan her own son since he was a child. Years later, after ruining many sewing machines, Juan was finally released, not guilty. The housekeeper had been waiting at the gate for a long time, but because the housekeeper was focused on reading the newspaper, she didn't notice that Juan had already left the prison. When she realized it, Juan had already gotten into a taxi alone. Suddenly, a familiar figure also climbed into the vehicle, and that person was Fa. Before Juan could react, she attacked him with a powerful blow. Soon, Juan fell into a deep sleep and was no longer conscious. The housekeeper saw this and quickly got into a taxi to follow them. On the way, the housekeeper contacted Aja about Fa taking Juan away. Not long after, Aja and the housekeeper met up. When they heard Juan's cries for help from outside, Aja was worried that Juan was in danger of losing his life. Without waiting for the housekeeper to call the police, she immediately rushed inside. Inside the house, Juan was tied up by Fa, who recounted that she had been preparing for this day for many years. She wanted to avenge her child. When Fa was about to take Juan to meet her child, Aja, who was hiding outside, attacked Fa unexpectedly, then quickly untied Juan. When Fa woke up, she questioned Aja why she would help Juan when he had treated her like that. Aja said that she did it to help Fa from making any more mistakes. But Fa, with hatred deeply ingrained in her bones, refused to believe it, claiming that Aja was faking kindness and righteousness, and criticized her for interfering with her revenge. During the argument, Fa was determined to eliminate Aja as well. While Fa was in a dangerous state, Juan, who had freed himself from the restraints, unexpectedly stood between Fa and Aja, blocking the fatal blow. Unexpectedly, in the end, it was Juan who saved Aja. Juan accepted his responsibility and downed the poisoned drink at the scene. Perhaps that was his way of atoning for his sins. Juan used his own life to repent for his mistakes. Although the ending removed Juan from heavy blame, and many viewers felt it was unnecessary, the editor still feels that everyone has wounds in their hearts. Some people use love to gain, and then love others. Some people can learn from their experiences, and learn to love themselves more. The most miserable are those who close their hearts, those who lose faith in good things. The movie ends here. Thank you for the support of the fans. Let's look forward to the next good movie together. If there are any good movies that you would like to recommend, please share them in the comments section, and we will share them with everyone to enjoy.